now that we got off to a rocky start. Let's start with this. So, glazing mugs. There's a couple of rules that you're going to need to remember for glazing mugs. But let's step back a second. That paper I just handed you, both of them, needs to be notes taken, sketches drawn. This gives you understanding, and it gives you ideas of places to start your projects. You need it when you start your project. You need it if you ask me a question, I'm like, you should probably go check your notes. Some questions are deeper than that, we'll answer them. Some I'll be like, you should check your notes. But these papers, if you keep them and turn them in, filled out, at the end of the term will be worth extra credit. Okay? Because this is what's going to guide you on your next two projects. So keep that in mind. And if you turn them in and they're filled out with good notes, some sketches, you'll get some extra credit. If you don't need extra credit at the end of the semester, please don't turn them in. Okay? I will dock your points. If you have an A and you bring in like, I need extra credit, I'll be like, you now have an A minus, thank you. Don't make me do extra work, Brent.
Well, okay.
I figured I'd just single you out. Okay. Now. All right, focus in. Glazing a mug. So there's a couple of things you need to remember. First, how do we know our piece has been fired?
The sound of when you lightly flick it.
The sound?
It sounds slightly like glass.
Okay. So sight and sound are the ways. So even just feeling it, it feels different than clay. But it gives us that tinging sound. Okay? But even before we go to pick up our mug, what do we have to make sure we do?
Not pick it up by the hand.
Oh, not pick it up by the handle, right?
Not drop it.
Don't drop it. Even before that, who went to McDonald's for lunch? In-N-Out, Chick-fil-A.
Arby's.
Okay, so what is it? Make sure your hands aren't greasy. Okay, greasy hands, hands with lotion on it, even really dirty hands when you come and touch this, it's going to rub off, and then the glaze is not going to stick as well. Okay.
Unless that's what you're trying to do.
It's not. It doesn't look good. Okay, so we make sure our hands are clean, we make sure that the mugs are fired, because if you glaze a mug and then put it in there, I'm not gonna fire it if it's not been fired first, okay? So always make sure it's been fired. If you don't know, ask. Now, we have our mugs, and there's two types of glaze we're going to use now. We're going to use paint-on glazes, which are in this cupboard. We're going to use dipping glazes. What is my definition of a glaze? Or give you a hint, it's like a recipe.
Mixture of it on together.
Something close to that. There's some solidness there. Anyone else? It's not chemicals, but it starts with like this. Materials mixed together, applied appropriately, fired to a specific temperature to get the desired results. Okay? And it is really that, because the materials have to have been mixed originally and mixed now. You have to apply them correctly or appropriately. I have to fire them to the right temperature. Anyone remember why the first set of plates didn't come out?
Because they weren't fired completely.
They're not fired all the way, so they don't look right. So they didn't get up to 2200 degrees. They got up to about 2100 degrees, which means they didn't mature or fire correctly. So we're gonna come over here, and we have our paint-on glazes. We're gonna start here. A couple of things you look for in a glaze. You look for, is it translucent or slightly see-through, or is it opaque? And we have both. Anything in this cupboard that says Celadon is translucent, which means you're going to see all of your textures, okay? The next thing we look for is the label. Actually, technically, I'd probably look for the label first. And we look for the color. This is what I have. I don't have anything else. And when one's gone, it's gone. And then we'll get more in as later in the semester, hopefully, with all of our shipping problems. You never know. But this is what we got. So, if you're like, I need a pink, I don't think I have a pink. You just gotta look through there and see what there is. Another thing you can look for, so you look for the color, but then you can look for something called breaking. Breaking on a glaze is not a problem. It's not actually chipping, it's not breaking. But what it does is, there's three parts to a textured piece. You have the mid-ground, which is pretty much just the flat areas. You have the low areas where it's pushed in, and you have the high areas where you have like corners. And when you put on a glaze, they will interact with that. If it's a really opaque glaze, it won't interact with your light textures very well, but it will interact with your heavy textures. A translucent glaze interacts with all textures. But something like this, that's one glaze, and there's three colors on there. There's the copper red, which is kind of this plum purple color. There's a darker, and then it'll actually break white, or really light. So you can pick a glaze that does things, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing texture, so we can see how glazes interact with our textures, okay? So you'll pick whatever it is, and there's blues, and there's reds, and there's browns, and there's whatever. There is a pink one, but it's almost gone. Sorry. Okay, when I pull these out, and it's really important, never grab from the cupboard from the lid. If that's not all the way on and it slightly comes off as you lift it, that's going to spill and it'll make a mess. That's one thing. If it's red and it gets on you and you have your nice white sneakers on, or shoes or kicks or whatever you call them, they will now have a stain on them. It'll be really hard to get off. Red has iron in it. Iron doesn't like to come out. So always grab from the cupboard with your hand on the bottle. And then what I will always do, I will loosen it and then I will tighten it back up. So I know that it's tight, because our definition is materials mixed together. So I ordered this from Amico. I ordered their Potter's Choice, and I ordered Vert Luster. That's what it's called. And I expect that the materials in that bottle, when applied appropriately and fired to the right temperature, will give me about that sort of a look, okay? So I take this, put the lid on, put my finger on top, and I shake this. Okay, that's a good sound. If it's not making that sound, I have one over there that's really chunky, and I need to add some water to it. Okay, so it's mixed. Now I need to apply it. Let's grab my So on most of these, let's read it. Apply 3 coats of glaze to a bisque-fired piece and fire to cone 5-6. So that means I'm going to apply 3 coats to a bisque-fired piece, right? Giving us the tinging sound. And I'm going to fire it in there again to cone 5-6, which is 2200 to 2230 degrees. So if I fire it in that temperature range, they're saying with 3 coats, I'll get something like that. Okay? So a rule for paint-on glazes. It does not hit all of them, but it hits most of them, is 3 coats. Okay? So if you don't want to read, 3 coats. There's a couple in there that say 2, there's a couple in there that say 4. But if you don't want to read, 3 coats. If you put on 1 coat, it'll look probably okay, not always. If you put on 2 coats, it'll be food safe, probably. There'll be enough glass in there to make it food safe. and it'll look maybe okay, maybe not, depending on the glaze you pick. But 3 coats should give you what it says on the bottom, okay? Materials, mixed together, applied appropriately. So, we're gonna apply this. And I started working on this last class period. I have 2 coats of one color, 2 coats of another. Crazy enough, they were both green as well, except for they went on red, right? One of those magical things that we do here. And I want you to address your project personally, and then kind of work from there. You still have to stick within the rules, and the rules are 3 coats. So I couldn't put on 3 coats of this, then put 3 coats of another one on top of that, and then 3 coats of another one on top of that. Okay, that's 9 coats, and that will have this big thickness out here. When it fires, that glaze will start rolling down, it'll hit the bottom. When it cools, it'll be stuck to my shelf. We'll pull this out, and a big chunk of your mug goes with it. And now you have a bottomless mug, okay? So, but I can change things up. And there's lots of ways you can change them up. So I have texture here. So I'm doing 1, 2, I'm gonna do a 3rd color down here. And then I'll do the star, a 4th color, right? I can do that. Where they overlap, they will actually create a different glaze. So, and they can overlap a little bit, you don't have to leave a space. So this is mixed up, so let's go ahead and paint this on here. If you want to be very particular on your glazing, I would say in class, you have about a half a day to work on it. If you really want to take the time, you need to come in on your own time and work on it. I don't set aside a day or 2 for everyone to glaze. I just say when you're ready to glaze, glaze. A lot of glazing, especially if we get to dipping glazes, takes 45 seconds. It doesn't take that long. So if you have a big mug or something with lots of details, you can work on it a little bit in class, but then you're going to need to come in on your own time, because the 7 days we're working on our projects are designed to work on the projects with a little bit of glaze time. That makes sense? Does that ring true to everybody? Or is that confusing? Sounds good? Okay, I'm a sloppy glazer, so there's like little flops here and there. It'll be okay. People like to be very particular. I'm not very particular when it comes to that. Okay, so I put those on. That's 2 coats. I'm gonna let those dry. And actually, I'm gonna put a 3rd coat on right now. Okay. And so now that new area is ready to fire, and we need to finish it. Now, the inside, if you do not glaze the inside, you can drink out of it a couple of times and it won't kill you. But if you put like hot chocolate in there, it'll eventually seep in a little bit, and it'll get gross, and it won't rinse out. If you put grape juice in there, it'll stain it. So if you're going to use this as a cup or as a planter, put glaze in it, okay? Now, when I'm done, and I'm not done, if you put it up here, if you're not done, and I go to fire and I grab it, I'll fire it, because I'm assuming it's done. When it's done, it goes up there. If it's not done, it goes back on your shelf. You can glaze this today and come back on Monday and finish glazing it. Okay, it's not going to be a big deal. Just remember how many coats you did of what glaze. Cool on that? Okay, let's talk about a couple of other things. You have options on glazes. I don't even know what's going on this one. I think there's 3 colors on this going this way, and then a color in the middle. Okay, so I did an inside-outside glaze. Where I did more mugs. this is a front and a back glaze, and then something on the rim. Okay, so we have one color right there, one color right there, and we did something on the rim. But let me show you. Trying to think. Okay, so as you're doing this, you get to choose how you do it. A lot of you will want to paint on glaze because you have more control and it's easier. It does take longer. If I wanted to do an inside-outside on this, I would probably pour in first and pour it out. So I'll actually show you that over here, and then you can dip or paint on your outside glaze. Okay. Yes.
If you get like something that's glaze like on the bottom of it and stuff, can you still wipe it off?
Yes, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to wipe it off.
Right.
Okay, dipping glaze. They're basically the same thing. What's the rule for coats on paint on glazes? 3, right? Okay. The rule for dipping glazes is 1 coat, less than 3 seconds. Okay, because if you leave it in there for 10 seconds, it's going to soak in more than it needs to. So 1 coat, less than 3 seconds. We've mixed it up for the most part. If you like dip it in, pour it out, it should be good. Now, on the colors here, there's 5 up there. I change them out occasionally, but this first one is clear. Okay, we know that. This one here is blue-green, and there's my bowl. It looks like this. It's a translucent color. It's a nice stable color. It will show, it's like a semi-opaque color, honestly. Sometimes it goes a little thick, but it'll show good texture, really light texture. Sometimes it covers it up, but it's a good glaze. The one behind it is called bright blue, and I couldn't find an example of bright blue, but if you grab some of this painter's tape, it's a little darker than that, okay? And I did one today in bright blue, so as soon as it's fired, we'll see it. But it's a good color. So if you like BYU, that's a good color for you. The one in the back here is called lapis blue, and it is a kind of a purpley blue. It looks like that. Okay, and that's the one I have the least amount of. And when it's gone, and I'll put another glaze up there. So it's also not shiny, so it's either matte or semi-gloss, depending on who you're talking to. They're about the same thing. Matte has little or no shine, semi-gloss has a light shine. Okay, and then this one up front, it's called Tenmoku. Tenmoku can be translated to be called hare's fur. A hare is a rabbit. And in Japan, they would say that it's, I can pull this out. That it would be splotchy. So I have 2 Tenmokus. I have this one, and I have that one. This one comes out like hare's fur. There's darks and lights. Okay? This, because it's actually designed to fire in a different kind of kiln, it's designed to fire in a gas kiln, not an electric kiln, comes out burgundy and sometimes almost black, but it doesn't have the splotches. But if I fired it in a gas kiln, it would come out like that bottle. It's a nice, consistent glaze. I use it a lot, and I really like it. The differences on firing depend on 3 major things: how thick your piece is. It also depends on how thick it is, the glaze, but how thick your piece is, where your piece is in the kiln, and how full the kiln is. If the kiln is loosely packed, you're going to get more of a red color. If the kiln is tightly packed, you're going to get a darker color, because the more pieces in there, the longer and hotter it gets and stays hot. It's like if you bake 2 casseroles. I don't know if anyone's ever baked a casserole in here, but if you put 2 in, you're gonna have to increase your time to get it up to temperature. And those casseroles and the oven, if you leave them in there, will actually stay hot longer because there's more volume. Okay. We went over last week, 2 weeks ago, how to mix them, right? And I showed you that there's water, and as they sit, that water accumulates, and what it just comes to the top. Really, what it is, the materials float to the bottom, and you have to mix them correctly. Materials mixed together, right? So we're going to do an in and out. This is third period, right? Okay. So I make sure my piece is fired. Okay. Sounds fired to me. And then I'm going to pour it in there. So I'm going to pour in there, I don't know, let's just pour in blue-green. And if you don't remember the rules on if you should mix it or not, the answer is you probably should mix it. But what it really comes down to is, did you see someone mix it, and have they mixed it in the last 2 to 3 minutes? And do you trust them for their mixing abilities? Okay. So if I mixed it and it's been under 2 minutes, you can probably just use it. Other people, maybe you want to second guess it and mix it anyways. Okay, not really a big deal. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just pour on the inside. Okay, if I'm going to do an inside-outside color, I'm going to pour. And unless we dip the whole thing in, I don't like to paint my insides with the paint on glazed. You can, but I don't like to. So I'm just going to come here, scoop this up. I only have this bowl because it was here. Normally we have a little measuring cup. And then I'm going to pour that out, like so. Now, walk around a little bit. You can see that it's dripped. Okay, you can be more careful. You could put tape on it. There's lots of things you can do. I don't care. I'm fine with those drips as long as the inside's completely covered. I can add glaze to the outside now and cover up those drips, but you've got to remember those drips interacting with another glaze will create something different. Yeah.
Will the color look like that?
Not necessarily. So let's see if I have. So this is Tenmoku with blue-green on the top. You can pass that around. But if you flip those and put blue-green underneath, there will be more red to it and less green. So there's blue-green here. If I put Tenmoku on the outside, those lines are not going to be bright like that. They're going to be darker. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So I have my pieces now dried. Now if I'm going to dip an inside-outside piece, I've got to wait for it to dry, and I'm going to hold it either like this or like this. And I'm going to dunk that in, okay? So let's do this in Tenmoku. Always remembering that red glazes stain. They stain our hands, they stain our clothes, and all that great stuff that goes along with it. Okay, so I'm just going to hold this like this. Now let's say I wanted to do this but also keep that heart and do that heart a different color. You could come in and tape over that heart, or you could wipe this off, the heart off in a minute. Either way would be fine. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll wipe the heart off. So I'm just going to dip that down to the rim and then set that aside. And now that will be an inside-outside mug. The inside will be blue-green, the outside will be Tenmoku, because I left the drips, there will be something else happening. As long as, did you see how fast that was?
Yes.
Under 3 seconds, right? Yeah. As long as it's just a little bit of overlap, it's not a problem. But we don't want to put on a whole bunch. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to these guys. These are the tongs. So these tongs reach into our mug and hold them like this. And we're going to put it in, wiggle it around, and pull it out. When you use these tongs, don't grab them at the rim like this. If you dig this in, especially if your mug's bigger and your piece is a little bit thin, that weight will push through and it will break your mug. Okay? So we put them down as far as possible. Then we're going to dip them. Now, alternatives to that, you could dip it halfway in, pour it out, let it dry, halfway in, pour it out, let it dry. Making sure that the lines cross on the inside. You could do 2 colors that way. You can do half one color, half another. Okay? Those things are possible. If you miss anything on the inside, do not double dip it. Okay, it's a single dip. Wait for it to come out, grab a paintbrush, and you can fix that problem. So let's do this. I'm going to come in, I'm going to dip it down, I'm going to shake it, I'm going to pull it out. And pull it out. 2.7 seconds.
That's good.
Set that right there. Rinse these off. Oh, and I didn't tell you, that back right one is called water. Water is not a glaze. It also says that, not a glaze. It is not to be dipped in. It won't do anything. But funny story to that, at the end of the year, we've used it so much, there's usually enough materials in the bottom. What a couple of us in the advanced classes will do sometimes is mix it up and see what it looks like. Because it's like a combination of all the glazes we've been using up here, right? And so it could be something awesome, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it's really ugly. Cool. Okay, put your lids back on. Never trust a lid. Always trust the bucket and the little map up there. Now, I'm going to take a sponge. I'm going to squeeze it out. And I'm going to clean up the bottom. So I've had people, where am I at? Right there. I've had people who come in with like metal ribs and they try to like scrape it up that way, and it just doesn't work very well. So come in, you can do this at the sink, or usually there's a bucket up here, and you just take a sponge and you wipe it off, flip it over, clean it out. Tenmoku is going to stain your hands. It will come off in about a day.
Like business days or normal days?
Business days or what?
Normal days. Sorry, that was a stupid joke.
Yeah, this is a dumb joke. My wife's always like, "Oh, you've been glazing today," because I go home and my hands are stained red. I'm like, yep. Or I murdered
She's
somebody.
thinking something else.
Maybe.
You actually brought.
Just kidding. I'm recording.
Holidays either.
Okay, and you're going to clean that up. Now, the red glazes do not come off all the way. They look good. There's always going to be a little bit of a tint there. Also, if you have texture, you can leave a little bit of that glaze in the texture as long as it's not touching. Now, when you're painting, you don't need to paint the bottom, but you still need to clean it off. So I have some on there. I'll need to clean that off when I'm done. For some reason, paint-on glazes are harder to get off than dipping glazes. So you're gonna have to scrub it pretty well. Now, something for you, when you go to clean these off, some of you will do this. You'll set this down on the table, and then you'll start to wipe away. Well, what that's going to do is put pressure on your rim and chip all that glaze off. So either hold it like this, or there's these little sponge things. They're in a box underneath the glaze table. Just grab them, flip your mug over on top like that. Get some water, come in here. And wipe that off. Anything that touches the table needs to be cleaned off, and it needs to be cleaned off up just a little bit. So when we put it on the table, and I hold it on the table, I can see a thin line of clay there. Because what's going to happen is if there's no line, the glaze will swell just a little bit in the kiln while it's firing. And if there's no line there, it'll swell and it could touch the shelf. And if it touches the shelf, it'll stick. And then again, when we pull it off, something comes with it. Sometimes it comes off, sometimes it doesn't. So we just want to be extra careful there. Okay, when we're done, we take our cleaned off piece, we put it over here. If you don't know, and a lot of you won't know because you're brand new at this, please come up and be like, Mr. Jones, is that cleaned enough? Okay, a lot of times I'll be like, no, see this area right here needs to be cleaned up more. There's still glaze there. Would anyone do that with plates? Right, same thing. Okay, anyone want to live on the wild side of things? Nice, nice. Okay, so we want to control our glaze application. 3 coats for paint on, 1 under 3 second dip for the dipping glazes. And that's a pretty good, actually it's a really great thing to do. But sometimes we want to add a little bit of life. So, so if we want to do something like this, put some little drips on our mug, we can. And the reason we can, this was dipped in blue-green, and then another glaze was put on top. The reason we can, anyone want to guess why we can do that? Why don't we overload our glazes? Or add too many layers? Yeah.
Because when you're saying it like falls off.
It'll drip, right? So we don't do it because it'll drip. But if you want to, you can put some up on the rim, and if it drips a little bit, it's not a problem. As long as you put 1 coat of something. If you put 3 coats of something onto something that already has 3 coats or a full dip, you've really overloaded it, and that will run. So this would have been like 1 coat, and that dripped down just a little bit, right? So what that would look like, we'll use this glaze I just used, and you just take it like this, and just run a quick coat over the rim. And that will add something. I don't know how this one looks. We do know how the blue-green looks over Tenmoku, right? So if I put blue-green on the rim, I'd know how it looks. But, okay, you see all that? See how that drip's going down a little bit? If it was going almost all the way down, I'd be like, we need to clean that up. But if that drips down halfway, that'll be fine. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, and that goes to this. If you start to do something and you're thinking, I think this is what I'm supposed to do or can do, but you're not for sure, please come talk to me. Okay, please come and go be like, hey Jones, I want to put something around the rim. And I'm like, so how many coats would you put on around the rim? And you'd say 17. No, you wouldn't say 17. You'd say 1, because you already put 3 coats, or you already dipped it once, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Put that over here. Can't wait for those to come out. Okay. I think if there's anything else I need to cover about glazes. Yes.
So if we like dip, can we clean off the drip with just like a water and sponge?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't show you how to do that, but kind of like what I did on the bottom, yes. The difference though is when you clean that up, you're gonna need to let your mug sit for 20 minutes or till the next class period, depending on when you do it, because it's now soaked in some water. And if you paint or dip in that spot, there will be water there and it won't apply properly. And so you're gonna want to wait just a little bit. But yeah, that's a great question because again, some people are very particular about what they want, and I'm perfectly fine with happenstance, things that just happen. So if there's a drip on there, I'm like, sweet, there's a drip on there. Some people don't like that, and that's good. That's okay. Okay.